So value, access, outcomes. Where does Elucid fall in those three areas?
Yeah, I think the unique opportunity with this technology is we have a conversation with the end user about how they want to deploy it. Do they want to deploy our technology on site and take on the responsibility of doing the vessel analysis in the radiology suite for the referring cardiologist? Or if they want to send us their images, we can render a report back to them. That'll sit in the patient's electronic medical record. So moving the care upstream to the cardiologist and the primary care physicians that are taking care of more patients before they get to the interventional cardiologist. Also, certainly interventional cardiologists see a ton of patients in the clinic, but I think the vast majority of patients, right, that have a family history, or they smoke or they're diabetic, are sitting with the non-invasive cardiologist until they have known or suspected disease that's been determined by some other test, and then they move down the line to either an interventional cardiologist or an invasive cardiologist. And so, as Blake mentioned, eliminating some of the tests, some of the invasive tests, because you didn't have access to know before I sent a patient to the cath lab what's in the artery wall, how at risk, what's the best clinical pathway to take this patient down. We'll save costs for the invasive angiography. And ultimately, again, we get back to personalized medicine, personalize the decision based on the report that we render to the cardiologist. So there's a workstation where there's a web browser, cardiologist can pull it up. They'll be able to see three-dimensionally as well as cross sections of everything that's happening in all your major arteries in your heart, right? Before I have to send a patient to a cath lab. And so reducing the cost for unnecessary tests that don't bring the level of detail and granularity, right, that you need to make a personalized decision, will obviously save costs, and you'll be able to reach more people with non-invasive imaging than you would if you have to send a patient to the cath lab. The third question was payers, I think it was?
Was really outcomes to the patient, and then the value and the access, but the outcomes to the patient.
I mean, listen, here's a real life example. Last summer, one of my close friends was not feeling well, and he went to a university hospital in Boston. 3 separate times was worked up with high sensitivity troponin tests, was put on a treadmill, and was sent home 3 separate times telling him it was anxiety. So he went vegan, started working out more. This guy actually owned a CrossFit gym. He was already an avid sort of weekend warrior, if you will. Wealthy guy, had access to any kind of healthcare you could possibly imagine. And unfortunately, shovel and snow last December, he keeled over and had a massive heart attack, and he died in the ER. And so this type of technology, I feel like, and I got introduced to Elucid a little late, a few months late, I feel I could have saved his life. And I had this conversation with his wife, and we've talked about that. Certainly there are prospective trials that we need to run, and but you've never had that opportunity to see inside the artery wall non-invasively at such a granular level, intraplaque hemorrhage, lipid-enriched carotid core, rather than just taking gross measurements, coming back to Hounsfield units, of a low attenuation plaque. So is that plaque black? Is it white? Is it gray? And sort of guessing at what's in the artery wall. I feel like if I could introduce this to Akshay, he would probably be here, because this is a guy that was 43 again. He didn't want to take statins. I can control my high cholesterol with becoming a vegan and working out a little extra harder. And you just can't do that, right? Sometimes you need to get on drugs. And I think for patients, understanding truly how at risk am I, what's in the artery walls, can allow me as a patient, would have allowed him as a patient, to take the recommendations to get on a statin or get on aspirin a little bit more seriously than he would have. So that's where the outcomes and the value for patients. So value for cardiologists, radiologists, and patients, I think, exists with something like this.